without further ado, let's jump into this. As always, we're going to recap the episode before we jump into it. And this is episode 105 of Critical Role Campaign 3, Collecting Legends. But if you find yourself just on our recap, because we cut it out and post it separately, be sure to check out our full discussion link down below. But I think Blake is going to take us off with the first half of this one.
Definitely had a small moment of, oh God, oh God, oh God. Did he? I thought he texted me that I was first half. Okay, so this episode opens up, as we always say, just where the last episode finished, where Imogen is essentially getting this vision from Liliana, the dream that she always gets. However, the unique thing about this is that it's as they're leaving the forge spot, the smaller meeting spot. She's not sleeping. It's literally like middle of the day, or in the morning rather. And she gets this dream, this vision from Liliana. She's in the Talon Highlands. It's almost working in reverse. Instead of like the storm that's encroaching, the storm's actually departing. And she's able to chat with her mother. Her mother gives her some information on Ludinus's plans, most notably that Ludinus is sending one of his simulacrum to the Fae, sort of confirming that the earlier version, which we knew this already, but just, I guess, confirming it literally, that the fight against Snow Ludinus was, in fact, a simulacrum earlier. But Ludinus is sending one of his simulacrum with in addition to the Sorrow Lord, to the Unseelie Court in the Feywild to sort of broker a new deal. Ludinus is apparently frustrated that the Unseelie Court has been relatively inactive and hasn't really sort of like done their part, I guess, in this whole Ruidus mission. And essentially, Liliana is letting them know about this because, hey, this could be something worth stopping or being involved in, or at least learning more about. She says the meeting's going to be happening at the Shrine of Gilded Gifts, which is not far from the Sablecast grounds, the place where the Malleus Key had been destroyed in an early episode in Campaign 3. Fern has a history check and actually knows this location. It's part of, and I lost the name of the city, starts with a P, but essentially, do you know it?
Like, it might come to me.
Okay. Essentially a city that at some point became poisoned and haunted and is essentially abandoned because of something that happened to this city. But there's a shrine there that this meeting is going to take place. Also, Liliana mentions that the Weave Mind has actually just returned from Exandria, that they went to Exandria and they were doing something. Specifically, Liliana mentions terraforming, which seems to be a connection to the fortress literally being built out of the earth around the actual the Tishtan excavation site where the Bloody Bridge is. And then lastly, Liliana lets Imogen know that Ludinus would like Liliana to meet with her at a nexus point where a memory can be shared with all of Exandria. This is presumably the orb and the downfall episode that we saw previously. Imogen asks Liliana if she can at all to avoid doing this. She should, but if it's going to give her up or put her in danger, to just go ahead and do it. So that she can live to fight another day, or for the bigger battle to come. Anyway, dream finishes. Imogen shares all of this with the party. They decide to, this could be like a potential next step of going to the Feywild, and then they head back to this larger forum meeting that ended the day before to sort of present the new plan on what they want to do with the three-pronged attack of sending the Mighty Nine to Ruidus to fight the Weave Mind, Vox Machina to the fortress to destroy the Bloody Bridge, and lastly, Bell's Hells to what Liliana calls the Hallowed Cage, this sort of last barrier protecting Predathos deep within the core of Ruidus. On their way over to this meeting, we get a really funny conversation between Breas and Fern. Fern and Ashton, who had hooked up the night before, Breas is like, "Oh, I didn't know that. I apologize for hitting on you. I didn't know y'all had something." And Fern's very much like, "Oh, well, we don't really." And then Breas is like, "Well, does Ashton know that?" And Fern's like, "Yeah, of course." And I don't have it in my notes, but there was also then like right after that a conversation with Ashton and Fern of Ashton basically like being like, "I'm really glad we had that time." And then Bryce is like, I think they actually maybe even kiss again. And Bryce is like, "Are you sure you're not like, are you sure that they know, what we're talking about here?" But anyway, the meeting is beginning to start. Orem does spot what looks like Dorian's dad in the crowd and lets Dorian know about it. The meeting begins. There's already people like trying to present their plans of attack, including the Marquise of Nicodranus, who has a solution, but Vexalia just jumps in and is like, "Actually, we have a better plan," and essentially presents this idea. People in the crowd, or rather, people in the meeting are worrisome about this plan for two reasons. One, they're like, "Who the heck are the Mighty Nine?" And secondly, Bell's Hells, we don't know anything about you. And essentially, the second part of this first half is basically an interrogation. Interrogation is too strong of a word. Sort of getting a sense of Bell's Hells, who their true allegiance is to, what makes you worthy to go on this mission? How do we know you're not just going to betray us? And to assist in this whole process, it is revealed that there is a silver dragon perched in like the ceiling of this large room by the name of Athudashionis, which I wrote out into its syllables to correctly pronounce. A silver dragon who casts Zone of Truth on the entire room. So like I mentioned, Vex gives the plan. The party gets sort of interrogated. One specifically, Breas gives like this speech about like doing what's right and how like they're like the most qualified to do this and like they can be trusted, and realizes that one of the people present is Highbearer Vord, who's sort of like the leader of the Platinum, the sanctuary for the Platinum Dragon. And Highbearer Vord's like, "It's really interesting hearing you talk about all this. Like, tell me more about you." And there is a couple of deception checks from Breas, one of them being a 20, that seems to appease Highbearer Vord, though it doesn't ultimately. I think Imogen has like a detect thoughts and knows that there's still some curiosity there. Breas is actually gifted some armor. It's sort of like, well, since you're going to represent us, here's this, very noble armor on our behalf. And there's even a cool moment of Pike talking about sort of like there's a moment where they talk about where Breas mentions like coming back onto the road of redemption. And like, even if you're not necessarily there yet, the path of getting there can be very valuable. And Pike's pretty much like, "Yeah, that's a really great point," which is a bit ironic considering that Pike serves the Everlight and Breas serves Asmodeus, the Lord of the Hells. Anyway, these questions sort of happen all around the party of like, who are you? What do you care about? I won't get too in the weeds on it. The other really cool detail, though, is Dorian is asked about his allegiance and his story. And Dorian gives, as Robbie Damon would do, this amazing speech about remembering the song that his mom would always sing him when he was younger, and talks about how, we're small, but we're mighty. And we have like strong friends, so to speak. And as he's saying this, he talks about Coriolis, the equine dragon from his like youth, basically like an apparition of it swoops down and like perches next to him to kind of show like, hey, we're the real deal, which the entire table is just like, "Robbie, what the heck, man?" So anyway, the meeting finally ends. They're like, "Okay, we approve, go die. Good luck." And as like people are dispersing, a young gnome goes up to Chetney and is like, "Chetney Pockapee?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I've been waiting so long to have this moment with you." And then meanwhile, Dorian's dad approaches him and says Bronte, which is we found out is Dorian's real name. And that's where we go to break. So why don't you take it from there?
Yeah. So we pick up with basically Dorian speaking with his father, Zeru Wyvernwind, who is surprised to find him here. And Zeru says that news of Cyrus's passing has reached him, so they do know about that. And he's wondering if Dorian knew, and he does, obviously. The two kind of share a quick embrace, and his father says, "Hey, like this is dangerous. You can just come home instead. Like the Silken Squall could use you. Like it could use a returning son." And Dorian says, "No, like I'm going to help my friends, and do you believe in me? Like, don't you think we can do this?" And his father pauses and doesn't answer immediately. And so Dorian says, "I just need to hear it once. Like, do you believe in me?" And Zeru says that he doesn't lack faith. He just can't lose another son. And so Dorian promises him that he will return. And Zeru then gives Dorian the blade off of his belt, which he says is a symbol of their family and has always protected them. And Matt reveals that this is called Gamble Cleft, the Vortex Blade. And so Dorian gets this, and in return, he gives his father the Gambler's Blade so that he still has something. Um, we then cut back over to Chetney, who is speaking with this young gnome that's a huge fan of his. And we find out that his name is Waylon, and he is a scale bearer here at the Platinum Sanctuary. And he is, like I said, just a Chetney stan, and he wants to show Chetney his house because it's essentially a museum to his work. And he reveals that he is one of Chetney's many fans who are known as sea poppers, and they're all over Exandria. They exchange letters, and it's just like a huge Chetney fan club. And essentially, Waylon has some stuff to do, and Chetney is like, get in touch with my assistant Imogen, and we'll be in touch. Like maybe we can come by. So it's at this point that High Bear Vord kind of steps up to the group again, and specifically to Breas, because they again had some kind of doubt when Breas was speaking. And Vord says, "How do I know you're not just going to burn down all of our trust?" And Breas says, "Yeah, that's fair, because I did lie a little bit, but I was an acolyte of the Platinum Sanctuary, and I brought shame upon it, so I was sent away." And it's at this point that Pike chimes in and is like, "Yeah, there are few things as valuable as a chance at redemption." And I think Matt has Sam roll another persuasion here, and he rolls like 30 something. And Vord says, "There's so much at stake here. And, I've kind of seen through you. And yes, the path to redemption is powerful, but if you are to represent us, then you need to represent us truly." And like Blake mentioned, this is when this armor is brought out, because Breas again is just wearing Asmodeus armor that he had like painted over for the Platinum Dragon, and Vord kind of like wipes away the paint, saying like, "I know what's going on here." And but these two acolytes or whatever bring up this chest, and inside is this silver plate armor called Truth Bearer. And Vord says this is the armor of the most noble warrior of the Platinum Dragon, Uther Vandrock. May it protect you on your path to redemption. And then they give it to Breas. Meanwhile, Orem follows Dorian's father outside and has a quick conversation with him where he apologizes for the loss of his son and tells him that he should be proud of both of his sons for what they've accomplished, and that Orem will look out for Dorian while they're on this journey together, and to know that his son will be chronicled in the annals of Exandrian history. So it's a nice little moment. And then we switch to Ashton and Dorian, who are having a little moment where Ashton apologizes to Dorian, saying, "Hey, I misjudged you at first. I thought you were this rich, royal, like soft guy, but clearly you're much more than that." But he goes, "But it's important not to lose that soft side. Like it's important." And Dorian says, "Well, you know what, Ashton, you're a big softy." And so they have a nice little moment. Um, we then switch, can't speak today, Keyleth and Imogen, who are having a quick chat where Keyleth checks in on her saying, "I know you have a lot on your shoulders. So if there's anything you guys need, you guys just let me know." And the one thing Imogen does mention is that Fern and Ashton are going to need some help with their exhaustion levels since they went into their Titan forms. We then find out that the party essentially has a week to plan before everything is going to be a go. So they chat about what their next moves should be, talk about a few different plans. And while they're doing this, Chetney kind of goes back inside the meeting hall to speak with the Bright Queen. He has to kind of finagle a little bit to actually get an audience with her. But when he does, he says, is there anything you could give us to help us on our journey, like your staff, maybe? And she's like, yeah, you know what, you're right, and kind of like moves the staff towards him, but then like yanks it back. She's like, yeah, right. And she goes, I don't have anything for you, but the one you travel with, the one called Ashton, very interested and fascinated in him. I want to know what he's capable of. So if you can give me any information on him or even how to control him, that could be very fruitful for you. And Chetney's like, okay. And the conversation essentially ends. He walks back to everybody else and doesn't tell them the true nature of what he was just talking about. Ashton then decides to go speak to the Bright Queen, and he apologizes for some of the things he said earlier. He says, you know what? I'll tell you anything you want to know about what's going on with me. Hopefully you can help me understand more about it just as soon as we get back. And so she's like, yeah, well, you need to return safely so that we can have that conversation. And she does give him a bit of advice saying that, like, if you're lost in it, look for the smallest bead of light you can and just hold on to that and let it bloom. And that should like center you, basically. Ashton does ask about her relationship with the Arkheart, and she says she doesn't have one because she doesn't follow any of those gods, but something way older. That conversation ends, and at this point, Waylon, Chetney's fanboy, returns and says, okay, I finished my duties. Could I show you my house now? And so the group decides, yeah, let's go check this out. So they go to Waylon's house, and it's essentially a museum for Chetney. There are all these like plaques and exhibits of different things Chetney has built, describing like when he built them and when Waylon added it to his collection. And Chetney has eaten this up. And he eventually talked about his most prized possession, which was the first piece of Chetney's work he ever got, that he got from a merchant way back when. And it's this like tiny little egg that when you twist it, it like opens up to reveal something inside. And he's got a pearl in there. And he's like, yeah, this is only one of 4 in Exandria. And Chetney's like, actually, there's 5 because I always have one on me too. And Waylon freaks out. And there's some conversation about like taking on an apprentice, like Chetney might do that for Waylon. And of course, that just makes him absolutely lose it. Ultimately, though, the group decides, let's just crash here tonight because Waylon has a whole collection of beds that Chetney has made. So there's enough beds for them all to stay. So they decide to do that. And Waylon asks, hey, Chetney, are you going to come to PopCon in a few weeks? Which is like this big gathering of all of Chetney's fans. And he's like, yeah, you know what? If we save the world, I'll be there. And that's essentially where this episode ends. Once again, that was episode 105, Collecting Legends. And if you're just on our recap, be sure to check our full discussion, which will be linked down below.